Lesson BTEC Level 3 National Extended Diploma in Business. This is a specification from first teaching in September 2016. These are the following learning aims we'll be covering. Learning aim A, B, C, D and E. In this lesson we'll be covering learning aim A. This is a summary of the unit. You can pause the video and just have a quick look if you want to. This is all of the content we'll be covering. We'll be looking at the BTEC Level 3 Business spec. Right now we're looking at Unit 1, Learning Game A, and specifically A1. So we'll be looking at features of businesses. In this lesson, in this video, we'll only be looking at ownership and liability, and that's it. In the next lesson we'll be covering purposes, sectors, scope of business, size and reasons for success. So this will cover P1, explaining the features of two contrasting businesses, and this will be your first pass task. Okay, so explain the features of two contrasting businesses, and again we're looking at learning game A1. So business ownership, there are three types of business ownership: private, public and not-for-profit. Any business in the UK will have to come underneath one of these types of business ownerships. Now, a private business ownership is basically a business that's out to make a profit. Okay, any business which is out to make a profit, so your shops, corner shops, Tesco for instance, your supermarkets, any business that comes to mind that is out to make a profit. We've also got our public ownership type, so any business belonging in the public sector, any organization that is, and these are usually government owned organizations, such as your police, your army. The BBC is actually it belongs to the public sector. Your schools, colleges, and so on. We've also got not-for-profit businesses, which are basically your charities and any organization operating in the voluntary sector. Okay, and they're not out to make a profit. Now we'll be starting off with sole traders. So in the private sector, we've got sole traders. Now the definition is a sole trader is a business which is owned by one person. Okay, you've got different types of businesses in the private sector. The first type is a sole trader. Okay, we'll be looking at partnerships, private limited companies, and public limited companies as well. But right now we're looking at sole traders. So a sole trader, so the main features of a sole trader is that it's owned by one person. Okay, they may have employees working for them, but it's owned and controlled by one person. You have to register, a sole trader has to be registered as self-employed by HMRC, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, and they're legally required to keep a record of all income and expenses, and at the end of the tax year to fill in a self-assessment tax return for HMRC. They must pay income tax. Okay, so sole traders must pay income tax. Now, when paying income tax, people have a personal allowance of up to £12,500, where they pay no tax on this basically. So any money that they make up to and including £12,500, they pay no tax on. However, once they earn between £12,501 to £50,000, they have to pay 20% tax. So any income or any earnings between those two figures, they have to pay 20% tax on. Any earnings or income between £50,001 and £150,000, they have to pay 40% tax on. Okay, and any income over £150,000, you have to pay 45% in taxes. Okay, so you have to pay income tax. Unlimited liability. Now this is a key feature of being a sole trader, having unlimited liability. This is because you're personally responsible for all debts. Okay, if your business falls into debt, you have to pay it off. There's no writing it off, there's no escaping it. You have to pay it off using your personal possessions. Okay, so you may have to sell your house, or your house may be repossessed. You may have to sell any personal items, your watch, laptop, so on and so forth. But you have to pay off that debt. That's what unlimited liability means. Okay. Now, we've got some advantages of being a sole trader. Some advantages are that it's cheap and easy to set up. Anyone can become a sole trader, pretty much. The sole trader keeps all the profits. So any profits that the sole trader makes, they get to keep it. They make all decisions. Financial records are kept private. Okay. Well, let's go back to that make all decisions point. As a sole trader, if you're making all the decisions and you're the only owner, you make fast decisions and you make quick decisions. Okay, there's no one to argue with, there's no one to discuss with. You make all your decisions. Financial records are private. Okay, so any profits or any losses you make, or anything that any financial records that remains private. You don't have to make it. You don't have to make it public. Motivation is high as the success of the business lies with the sole trader. Um, However much energy you put into the business, that's how much sales or profit you should get out of the business. Basically, if you want to do overtime or put in any extra hours, you should get more money out of that. Disadvantages are, of course, unlimited liability. If you fall into debt, you have to use your personal possessions to pay that off. There's limited capital. Okay, you have to really just rely on yourself. If you want to get if you want to get a loan from the bank, that's gonna, that's not really gonna work in your favor as you're a new business, and you're quite small as well. So the loan you're looking for might not be as much. It'll be better if you had a reputation, or if you were a bigger business, you'd probably get a bigger loan. Limited skill set, as you're the only owner or usually the only person. There's a limited skill set. You might not have the skills of more than one person, if that makes sense. For example, if you're working in a hairdresser's and a certain person walks in and wants a certain hairstyle, and you're the only person working in that barbershop or hairdressers, there's not much you can do except say, we don't really offer that service, or we can't really do that hairstyle for you. You work long hours, that's another disadvantage, and if you're ill or take a day off work, there's no sales or profits to be made for that day. Now, what do you think are some examples of a sole trader, and what do you think are some personal attributes of a sole trader? Okay, I want you to have a think of those. You can pause this video, have a quick think about that. Okay, you should have had a thought about that and should have gathered some answers. We're going to unpause, well, not unpause, we're going to carry on now. Some examples are hairdressers, electrician, shopkeeper, and some examples of personal attributes are being creative. Okay, a sole trader or an entrepreneur, as we call it, they have to be creative. They have to be willing to take risks. They may have to leave their previous profession, or invest a lot of personal income into this business. Okay, so they have to be a risk taker. They have to be organized. Okay, they have to be self-motivated and determined. They have to have great communication skills. They'll be talking to multiple people, maybe to a bank, maybe through online communications, actually talking one-to-one to their customers. So they have to have great communication skills. They have to be confident, and they have to be resilient. Okay, nobody's going to make profit straight away. Usually businesses make a loss before they make a profit. Okay, so they have to be resilient. They have to know that they're going to have a lot of fallbacks or a lot of setbacks before they start seeing some positives. We're moving on now to the next business ownership type, which is partnerships. We're still in the private sector, but we're looking at partnerships now. So a partnership is a business which is owned and controlled by two or more people. They share all responsibilities. Okay, and some features are that they're owned by two or more people. They share risks, costs, decision making, and all responsibilities. Individual partners have to register as self-employed with HMRC. And again, similar to sole traders, they have unlimited liability partnerships. They may write out a partnership deed or a contract stating what each member's role is and entitlement and method of dissolving the partnership. So, for example, in this agreement or in this contract, it will set out what all of the different partners have to do or their role. Okay, their roles may be different, and it should also explain how much each member gets in terms of profits, and it should also tell you how to dissolve the partnership in case a member wants to quit, how that will work. Some advantages again is that it's cheap and easy to set up. Financial records are private, but the burden is shared now. Okay, it's not just one person making decisions or one person having to do all of the work. It's shared. Okay, and that may be seen as a advantage. Specialists may team up. Okay, so in a partnership now, we've got specialists that may come together. So remember that example of the hairdressers? You might have someone that might be able to, that might specialize in dyeing hair, and another hairdresser that might specialize in doing, I don't know what kind of hairstyles, but a certain type of hairstyle. And another advantage is that it's more flexible than a sole trader. Okay, partners may agree on days off, or may ask for a day off, and that may happen, and profit may still come into the business because the other partner or partners may continue working. More capital can be raised. Okay, so between the partners, more capital can be raised. They may be able to ask more family members, maybe for interest-free loans, or they may be able to go collectively to a bank and ask for a loan. Okay. Disadvantages again: unlimited liability. There may be arguments if people don't agree, if the owners don't agree with each other. It may slow down decision making. Okay, if one person wants to do something, another partner may disagree, or it may take time for that partner to understand the reasoning behind that first partner's reason why they want to make that decision. So it may slow down decision making, getting everybody on board. If the partnership is dissolved, the partnership is dissolved if something happens to a partner. So if a partner decides to quit, or in the unlikely or unfortunate circumstances a partner passes away, the partnership is dissolved. They must be able to trust each other, and this is a key disadvantage, because if they can't trust each other, there'll be a lot of issues, and a lot of people have broken up partnerships due to trust issues. I know a lot of people personally, they've broken up partnerships, and when I've asked why, they've said I couldn't really trust him, they made off with the money, or other reasons. What do you think are some examples of a partnership? Again, you can pause the video, have a quick think about that. Okay, you should have had a quick thought about that. Now, some examples are doctors, dentists, and solicitors. We're now looking at private limited companies. Okay, now at the end of a private limited company, you usually see the words LTD. Okay, and that means they're a private limited company. Now, they're a business which is owned and controlled by shareholders, and shares are sold privately, okay, to friends and family and to selected people. So some features of a private limited company is that they're owned and controlled by shareholders, and again, shares are sold to family, friends, and selected people. Now, they have limited liability. This is a key feature. This means that the owners are not responsible for any debts. Okay, the owners and the business are two separate entities. Okay, so they're two separate legal entities. So they can't. So they're not liable for any debts. The owners are not liable for any debts. The shareholders are not liable for any debts. They don't have to pay off the debts. If the business is in debt, or the owners don't have to pay off the debt using their personal possessions, let's say. If the business is in debt or goes bankrupt, personal possessions will not be touched. Only their share in the business is lost. So if you're a shareholder in a private limited company, your personal possessions won't be touched. Okay, the only thing that is lost is your investment in the business in terms of how many shares you bought into the business. Okay, that's the only thing that can be lost. You must register at Companies House, so private limited companies must be registered at Companies House, and each year must submit a true and fair set of accounts along with an annual return. Some advantages are, again, limited liability. Capital can be raised through selling shares. So if the business of a private limited company all of a sudden said, look, we need to raise some capital, the owners can, or the current owners, the current shareholders can agree, okay, let's sell some shares, let's sell X amount of shares to so and so, let's see if they're interested in buying shares, and they can sell those shares and raise some capital. Their status can allow for large loans from a bank, so that LTD status, and financial records remain relatively private. Okay. Now, some disadvantages are that it's complex to set up. There's loss of control as shareholders have voting rights. So each shareholder has a voting right relative to how much shares they have in a business or how much percentage of the shares they have in a business. And another major disadvantage is that they're unable to sell shares to the public. Okay. However, another advantage which isn't here is that well, actually, we'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that, okay? But they're unable to sell shares to the public. Now, what do you think are some examples of private limited companies? Have a think about it. Pause the video. Okay, now you should have had a thought about that. Here are some examples of private limited companies, okay? We've got Virgin. Okay, and Virgin is huge. There's Virgin Rail, Virgin Atlantic, Virgin Music. There's loads of different Virgin stores. Okay, we've got River Island, the clothes shop, the clothes store. We've got Iceland, Specsavers, and Home Bargains. Okay, these are all examples of private limited companies. If you didn't know, now you know. We're moving on to public limited companies now. So these are businesses which is owned and controlled by shareholders. Okay, so similar to private limited companies. However, shares are sold publicly on the stock exchange. Okay, the Financial Times stock exchange. Okay, features of a public limited company. So owned and controlled by shareholders. So similar to private limited companies. However, the main difference is that shares are sold publicly on the stock exchange. Right, so anyone and everyone can buy shares in public limited companies. Okay, now normally people don't just buy one or two shares, people buy hundreds or thousands of shares, or even tens of thousands of shares. Now, again, they have limited liability, they must register at Companies House, and each year they must submit a true and fair set of accounts along with an annual return. So very similar to a private limited company. The main difference is that they're allowed to sell shares publicly. So again, the advantages are very similar. Limited liability, huge capital can be raised through selling shares publicly, okay, on the stock exchange. The status can allow for large loans from a bank if they wish to, or if they needed to do that. And disadvantages are similar again, complex to set up, loss of control as shareholders have voting rights, and there's a risk of takeover if anyone buys more than 50% of shares. So if anyone buys more than 50% of shares in a business, that person practically owns the business. Why? Because now they have more than 50% of voting rights. So if they wish for something to happen, they outvote everyone else. Okay, so whatever they want to happen will happen, basically. And financial records must remain public. So now that you're a public limited company, your financial records must remain public, so everyone can see your financial records, your profit, your loss, sales, etc. What do you think are some examples of public limited companies? Again, pause the video, have a think about that. Okay, you should have had a thought about that. Here are some examples that I've got for you. Tesco PLC, Barclays PLC, Unilever, BT Group, BP, British Petroleum, and Rolls-Royce Holdings PLC. Okay, so these are all examples of public limited companies which you can buy shares in. Okay. Um, Now we're looking at a cooperative, okay, which is also in the private sector. So a cooperative is a business which is owned and controlled by its members. They work towards a common goal. Some features of a cooperative is that it can be owned by the employees, the customers, the suppliers or producers, or the local residents. Okay, they're set up to benefit its members. Decision making is by each member. Okay, so for example, you've got some consumer co-ops, okay, or some customer co-ops where their main aim will be to provide high quality products at low prices. Any profits are then reinvested back into the business for this cause. Okay, so any profits will be reinvested back into the business, and maybe they'll try and create or produce more higher quality products, or try and source more higher quality products, or try and find suppliers that sell higher quality products at really lower prices. And you've also got employee co-ops, and they may work or they may aim to improve working conditions. Profits given to employees or again to help improve conditions. Okay, so any surplus profits are given back to employees in the form of higher wages, maybe, or higher salaries, or to improve working conditions. Maybe there's something which needs to be fixed or something that needs to be revamped, and that will be used for those reasons. We've got some examples of some co-ops. We've got the co-op supermarket and funeral care, as you can see, and you've probably seen these. We've got some farmers co-ops as well. In particular, we've got Arla, okay, which specialise in dairy, okay, and milk production. We've got some. Okay, so we're now looking at the public sector. Okay, so the business ownership, the public sector, which is anything government owned. The definition is an organization owned and controlled by the government rather than individuals or groups of individuals. Features of a public sector organization. So their main objective is to provide goods or services to society, okay, to benefit society. Um, if the government didn't really provide these goods or services, the public may not pay for these goods or services, okay? Or these goods or services might not be provided to a high quality, let's say, or a high standard. So therefore, the government steps in and provides these goods or services. It's provided by the government, so it's funded through taxpayers. Okay, individuals or uh, businesses even will pay tax, and this tax is then funded through the government. Okay. All these organizations are then funded through taxpayers. Okay, so we've got some examples: the NHS, okay, police, the army, your defense, schools, so education, BBC, your news outlet, or like BBC One and BBC Two, and that's why you don't see any advertisements on them. Okay, all right. Now we've got not-for-profit, so we've got charities or anything that's voluntary. So, not for profit, an organization with an objective other than making a profit, usually to help a good cause, for example, to eradicate poverty. Features of a not for profit organization are the objective is other than making profit. Okay, so it might be to help society or to provide a certain service for them. They're dedicated to a social cause. Any surplus revenue is pumped back into the organization to help meet their aims. And trustees of a charity have limited or no liability. Okay, so any charity that you choose or you select, you just have to do a bit of research and just try to find out, what sort of liability does my charity have. Okay, some examples of charities are Cancer Research, Oxfam, WaterAid, and I'm pretty sure you can think of many more. Now your task is to research two contrasting businesses which you would like to complete for your assignment 1. Make sure that they have lots of information about them, okay, because you're going to have to do a lot of work on these businesses, so make sure there's a lot of information you can get. You don't want to be working through the assignment and then say to yourself, oh, there's not much information on this or that. So make sure whatever business you pick, there's lots of information about them online that you can find. Your first business has to be a public limited company, so make sure you pick a public limited company. And your second business has to be a charity. Okay, so make sure you pick a charity. You then have to research and write up to half a page of the history of both businesses and what they sell or provide. Okay, so you can just talk about how they were created, how they were formed, if they changed from a private limited company to a public limited company, maybe who the owners are, their names, what years they were formed, the business, and maybe some other information like how much sales they made, how much profit they made, how many stores there are, if they operate nationally or internationally, and if you're talking about the charity, then how much donations they donated, or how much money they raised, and so on and so forth. Okay, so it's just half a page, and that's the end of that lesson. In the next lesson, we'll be looking at the rest of learning game A1, and that's that. Okay, thanks. Bye.